the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. And we're back to Salt of the Streets podcast. Social and political commentary. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's always and forever. That's right. Salt of the Streets. Another fantastic episode. Everyday Normal Person's podcast. Salt of the Streets. Upper left or the upper left? Just upper left. Welcome to the Salt of the Streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why Salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. And we're back to Salt of the Streets podcast. Social and political commentary. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's always and forever. That's right. Salt of the Streets. Another fantastic episode. Everyday Normal Person's podcast. Salt of the Streets. Upper left or the upper left? Just upper left. Welcome to the Salt of the Streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why Salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. And we're back to Salt of the Streets podcast. Social and political commentary. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's always and forever. That's right. Salt of the Streets. Another fantastic episode. Everyday Normal Person's podcast. Salt of the Streets. Upper left or the upper left? Just upper left. Welcome to the Salt of the Streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why Salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. And we're back to Salt of the Streets podcast. Social and political commentary. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's always and forever. That's right. Salt of the Streets. Another fantastic episode. Everyday Normal Person's podcast. Salt of the Streets. Upper left or the upper left? Just upper left. Welcome to the Salt of the Streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why Salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. And we're back to Salt of the Streets podcast. Social and political commentary.
Hey, look at that. It worked. Got a new piece of hardware in the studio today. Welcome back to Beer Time with Big Bird, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me, Bilbo and Mr. Donovan. I see you over there in the chat. What is up, guys? If you guys are new here, if anybody watching, if you are new here, this is the lovely kind of weekly sideshow from Salt of the Streets, where once a week on Friday we ring in the new year, as is only good and proper, by cracking open an ice cold brew and talking about a little bit of news or just anything else that's really just been kind of bugging the shit out of me this week. And today it is news heavy. We are going to be doing an update on everything Ukraine, Russia, World War III. It's pretty fantastic and pretty terrifying. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and crack into our beer. I can talk today. And we'll get this weekend kicked off good and proper. That's right, Bilbo. It's war. But, I mean, hopefully not. Nobody wants a war, right? I mean, I don't want to do that. I'll be one of the first on the list, bro. I'm not old enough to not be on the list. And as a veteran, I'm not trying to fight this war for these people. But let's take a look at today's beer. Donovan, you probably remember, you're probably very familiar with this beer. This is the great and powerful Bodhisattva, coming from Georgetown Brewing out of our very own Seattle. It's probably the best thing ever to come out of Seattle since Super Bowl winning Seahawks. We'll go with that. That's what we're going to go with. This is a lovely IPA. And I think technically it's a single IPA. It's not like a double. But it comes in at 6.9%, so it's a pretty heavy hitter. And once again, we're going to negotiate around the mic stand, and we're going to pour this beer. Wow, I got to go high on this one. I moved the camera. Look at that. And we're not going to screw up the pour this time. That's going to be weird. Oh, look at that. Hot dog. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. I like never really noticed the hazy action that goes on in this beer. It's just a really, really, really sweet IPA I've found, and so like it's not real super bitter like a lot of the other IPAs you drink out here. So it's very it's very sneaky IPA. It'll get you. Deborah's in the house. What is up, everybody? Bilbo, we need peace negotiating very, very bad right now. Amen to that, and we will get into a whole bunch of the lack of that's going on right now as we get going. But first, we got to kick off this weekend good and proper. Everybody, cheers! Happy Friday. Let's kick off this wonderful long weekend. We got the Indigenous Peoples Day on Friday, guys. Cheers to that. I'm down for that, especially if I get another beer. All right, so I'm going to attempt to use this brand new piece of hardware I have in here to press a button. I don't even have to press the mouse. And boom, look at that. We're looking right at the desktop. I love this thing. It's called a Stream Deck. It's pretty sweet. It kind of just helps my producer, wings, spread and fly out. So the first major update of the past week as far as Ukraine-Russia situation goes was the coming out from the intelligence agencies. I think it was originally reported by the New York Times that it was indeed, they believe anyways, it was Ukraine that was behind the car bombing attack that killed that kind of Russian imperialist, Russian capitalist daughter, Daria Dugina, I think her name is. Dugina, yeah, because her father is Dugin, so she's Dugina. I don't know. It's a whole Russian thing. So we're going to kick off today by looking at this Hill story. U.S. officials say Ukraine was behind car bomb that killed daughter of Russian nationalists, courtesy of the New York Times. U.S. intelligence officials allege Ukraine was responsible for a car bomb that killed the daughter of a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The New York Times reported on Wednesday. Daria Dugina. We're going to go with Dugin. Dugina. The daughter of Russian nationalist Alexander Dugin was killed in August when an explosive device planted under her Toyota Land Cruiser went off. American officials told the New York Times that U.S. intelligence believes part of the Ukrainian government authorized the attack, though they did not specify whether Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky was aware or had signed off on the attack. That's crazy talk. Is it just me or is that crazy talk? And I should mention that in the original article from back in August after the car bombing took place, the FSB came out after their initial investigation and blamed it on Ukraine. Hashtag, it turns out it was fucking Ukraine. Imagine that shit. Now, this is not good, man. This is interesting. There's a couple facets to look at here. For one, there is obviously the leaked intelligence to the New York Times, something that we have seen become essentially a regular and kind of anticipated action since at least the Donald Trump years began, where we have what is essentially probably supposed to be some form of like non-publicly released information coming out to and being leaked directly to a journalistic outfit, quote unquote, like the New York Times or the Washington Post or something like that. I mean, I don't understand why this is not an issue. It brings me back to the old. Do we have any idea today who leaked the Supreme Court opinion around the Dobbs decision? That's not in the news cycle at all. We still don't know who's doing that or who did that. We're just kind of forgetting it and moving along. But there's an aspect of this that is very disturbing. And the other aspect of this is now, again, we're kind of doing that whole, when Mar-a-Lago was raided by the FBI, there was that whole, well, did President Biden know what was going on behind his back and in the halls of the DOJ with Merrick Garland? I mean, do you really think that like we would have put out, or Ukraine would have put a hit, on the daughter of a massive public Russian figure, and Zelensky didn't know about it? I have a hard time believing that's the case, although I don't know, Ukraine is such a hive of corruption within the government that I guess it really wouldn't surprise me. We still don't know where, the billions and billions and billions of dollars that we've sent to them are going, so maybe he honestly didn't know. I don't know. But it is no surprise to me that the intelligence agencies are kind of pinning it on Ukraine, which I think is also a good segue to get into our next update with Ukraine. And this one involves our lovely Nord Stream pipeline investigation. Before we do that, let me read this here. Bodhi's a great choice. The blame of the Ukrainians makes me nervous, regardless if it's true or not. Amen to that, Donovan. Yeah, this is why I entitled this episode "Led to War," because I feel like we're going to cap this whole thing off to be examining the entire situation and feel as if does this not feel like we are being led hand in, like on a leash right to a massive military worldwide conflict? Because it sure feels like it to me. A military base in Russia was bombed earlier today by Ukraine. Oh, Bilbo coming in with the heater. I didn't see that. But it does surprise me if that is indeed the case. Whoo, it's going to get escalatory, baby. Especially after the comments that Zelensky made yesterday, which we will be getting into as soon as we tackle the update around Nord Stream. So let's dive into this from Routers. Nord Stream investigation finds evidence of detonations, the Swedish police say. It's interesting. From Helsinki and Stockholm. So Helsinki being Poland, I believe, and Stockholm, of course, being Sweden. A crime scene investigation of Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines from Russia to Europe find evidence of detonations, strengthening suspicions of, quote, gross sabotage. Sweden's Security Services. Sweden Security Services. The SSS, which, it's probably just the American translation of that because that's problematic. But they came in on Thursday and said that Swedish and Danish authorities have been investigating 4 leaks after the pipeline, which links Russia and Germany via the Baltic Sea and have become a flashpoint in the Ukraine crisis, were damaged at the start of last week. Europe, which used to rely on... we can just skip that one because I hate all the context in that for no reason. It is investigating what causes the leaks as Moscow seeks to pin the blame on the West, suggesting the United States stood to gain. Washington has denied involvement. We'll get into that. Quote, after completing the crime scene investigation, the Swedish Security Service, The Triple S can conclude that there have been detonations at Nord Stream 1 and 2 in the Swedish economic zone, it said. The security service added that there was extensive damage to the gas pipeline and it had retrieved some material from the site that would now be analyzed. The evidence has strengthened the suspicions of gross sabotage, it said. The crime scene investigating conduct by the Swedish Coast Guard and Navy would have involved unmanned vehicles. Swedish Navy spokesman Jimmy Adamson said the pipes are at a depth of 70 to 80 meters, and at those depths we use unmanned underwater vehicles, he added. Russia said it had been informed via diplomatic channels that it was not able to join the investigation. Quote, as of now, there are no plans to ask the Russian side to join investigation, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters, adding that Moscow replied it was not possible to conduct an objective investigation without its participation. Amen to that. The operators of the pipeline owned by Russia and European partners said this week they were unable to inspect the damaged sections because Danish and Swedish authorities had cordoned off the area on Monday. And this was not a article that I pulled up today, but I did check out the actual statement from Gazprom, or I think it's, if you just I think the American version of it is nordstream.com, but it's from the actual company, and they're pissed that they as a company haven't been able to send down investigators along with the collective, with Danish and Swedish investigation that's going on. And of course the Russian government's pissed off too, because this is also their pipeline owned by a Russian national gas company, and they're not being allowed to participate either. And of course, how is it that you as Russia cannot have like somebody there to go down and at least view the investigation? How are you supposed to give any validity at that point to what it is that they're doing? It's the same reason that we have UN investigators and stuff like that go into like watch the Iranian nuclear facilities to make sure they're doing their part on the nuclear deal back when we used to have that. I don't understand what is the hesitation here, man. If you want to be transparent to the world, if you want to cool shit down, bring some Russian civilian contractors down with you or have them review the evidence with you or something. Otherwise, you're gonna look sus. And you tell me that this doesn't seem sus right now. And then, of course, there was to add to that, there was a nice interview with a guy named Jeffrey Sachs. He's a Columbia University economics professor over on Bloomberg earlier this week, and he talked a lot about the Russian investigation, or the Russian and Ukrainian war, the whole conflict, the whole 9 yards, and eventually he had this to say about the pipeline, and I thought it was very, very interesting.
And now, to make it definitive, the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, which I would bet was a U.S. action, perhaps U.S. and Poland. This is
Jeff,
speculation.
we got to stop there. That's quite a statement as well. Why do you feel
Absolutely.
that was a U.S. action? What evidence do you have of that?
Well, first of all, there's direct radar evidence that U.S. Helicopters, military helicopters that are normally based in Gdansk, were circling over this area. We also had the threats from the United States earlier in this year that one way or another, we are going to end Nord Stream. We also have a remarkable statement by Secretary Blinken last Friday in a press conference. He says, this is also a tremendous opportunity. It's a strange way to, it's a strange way to talk if you're worried about the piracy on international infrastructure of vital significance. So I know this runs counter to our narrative. It runs,
runs counter to the narrative, and he said it right there on TV, man. Oh, it's like almost too good to be true. It's this guy, he's a very well-respected guy on the left, and he comes on a mainstream outlet like Bloomberg, and then all of a sudden he's like, well, this runs counter to our narrative, but this seems super sus. Bilbo, I have no doubt in my mind the U.S. is responsible, and possibly even Germany. You know, there's only, when you really ask the major question, and I'm not going to try to say it, but there's like a Latin saying for like who benefits. When you ask that question, you can't ask that question if you want to blame Russia, because they don't benefit at all, unless of course you take this wild kind of conspiratorial look. Like I thought of this kind of psychotic theory the other day that, you know, one of the only reasons I might be able to be convinced that Russia would blow up their own pipeline like this would be to say, if Vladimir Putin wanted a war so bad and he was so deep into it that he said, you know, I don't even want to give the West a chance by thinking that there's a way we can turn this pipeline back on. So I'm going to blow up this pipeline, and it does remove this avenue of de-escalation because I want to go to war, and I'm just going to let them know that this is it. And I just think that's psychotic, first of all, but especially because Putin in his public remarks at some point had said that, you know, he's not necessarily looking to start World War III, but he could if we keep going here. So yeah, it's not a good deal, man. And when you look at the pipeline investigation going on with the Swedes and the Danish, it really does beg the question, why the hell won't you have Russian observers there? You look real guilty. You look as guilty as Iran did when they wouldn't let the nuclear observers go into their centrifuges and shit. Come on, man. Come on. And it just leads me to believe y'all trying to start a war. I mean, we're trying to start a legitimate worldwide war. I mean, I'm going to argue that we are definitely in a war and have been in a war since, I mean, probably going on decades. That we never really stopped being at war with the Soviet Union, and then later on after that, the Russians. But I mean, it's been going on since World War II, and it continues to this day. It's just at one point, we got our American, quote, boots off the ground, which we'll get to because there are American boots on the ground in Ukraine. Shout out Donovan, you were always right, 100%. Now it appears that if we have some evidence to that effect. But yeah, this is just the continuation of a proxy war. We're not in Afghanistan anymore, so we can't fight with them there because they were all, the Russians were always, using Iranian proxies to fight us in the Middle East, just like we were using our proxies in the Middle East to fight them. The war continues. It's just we're finally starting to peel off the layers enough to just be that it's just down to us. This whole Ukrainian conflict, we're just using Ukraine as a pawn, as a tool to fight Russia. And Russia's not, they don't have any, they're not confused about this. I mean, they've been at war with the West. They've been at war with America, period. That's the way they see it, at least in the upper echelons of the government. So this video that we're going to get to next was one that was also kind of disturbing. And unfortunately, I had to go back and watch the entirety of the interview because I needed to make sure I was getting the correct contents. So I sat through the entire video, and it was a deal. But I did that so that I could confirm that this small little clip is indeed correct and accurate, and all the context that they're trying to say is not a part of it anymore is indeed just all the context is in this clip that you need to see. So let's watch this.
Що повинна робити НАТО?
I should probably say this. What should NATO do? This is Zelensky. He's giving a speech at Lowy Institute. This was, I believe, yesterday or day before. And so he's asked a question from the person that's hosting the event. And the question is, what should NATO do? And after about 10 minutes of other nonsense, he finally answers the question. He says, what should NATO do? Eliminate the possibility of Russia using nuclear weapons.
Унеможливлювати застосування Росією ядерної зброї. Але, що важливо, я
But what is
ще раз
important, I once again appeal to the international community, as I did before February
звертаюсь до
24th.
міжнародної спільноти. Як це було до 24-го? Превентивні
We need preemptive strikes so that they'll know what will happen to them if they use nukes, and not the other way around.
удари щоб вони знали, що з ними буде, якщо вони застосують, а не навпаки. Чекати
Don't wait for Russia's
ядерних
nuclear
ударів
strikes and then
Росії,
say,
щоб
oh,
потім
since you
сказати,
did this,
ах ти так,
take that
ну
from
стримай
us.
від нас. Переглянути.
Reconsider the way you apply pressure. This is what NATO should do. Reconsider the order in which it applies pressure on Russia. Now, the subtitles of this are different than the original video, which had a live translator speaking. And when he says we need to do first strikes, NATO needs to do a first strike, the translator says first strike and then says first actions. Now, I don't know. That's kind of like the tilt they're going on afterwards to say, well, he wasn't really talking about that, and he was talking about February 24th. That's all bullshit. He's talking about right now. He's a 100% talking about right now. But there was that exact closed caption was not exactly what was said per the translator from the actual video. And if you want to watch that video, it is in the show notes today. The link is in the description. You can follow it and waste your time listening to this dude talk about just a bunch of kind of nonsense for, I think it's like 45 minutes long. Just drop some of your nukes for me. It's no big deal. No, it isn't any big deal to him. I'm wondering, actually, I wonder if he knows how like an invaluable pawn he really is to the world, that he's just a tool. And so he's just trying to get every little thing he can out of it. Because this is just wild, man. Nobody, first of all, we don't understand the thinking behind the Ukrainian mind. They don't operate in the same world that we Westerners do. He said 100 times at this point that, and he actually says in this interview earlier on that essentially Russia needs to lose. We need to get back Crimea. There can be no appeasement with Russia. They need to lose and Ukraine needs to win. So his stance, like I think it's been from the jump, has been to retake every inch of former Ukrainian territory from before the war started in 2014. That's been his whole deal from the jump. This is no different. We've just been lied to this entire time and told fucking fairy tales about what they really want, and we're gonna have some peace negotiation, and there's gonna be this, that. He doesn't want that at all. I would argue that like Russia's probably more apt to come to the negotiating table if they just get what they want and then walk away, whereas Ukraine's gonna be like, nah, dude, we're going all the way. I got Big Brother back here. He's gonna back me up. No worries. So that's a whole deal. Deborah says, I know he is in a war, but hasn't he been wearing the same shirt since February? I mean, it's Ukraine, man. We've only been sending them tens of billions of dollars. I'm sure he's pretty strapped for cash right now and can't afford anything else. Really what it is it shows, this is just 100% calculated. It's public perception 101. You want to look like you're the man in the trenches fighting this war. You're in it, man. So you're always in your military t-shirt ready to go, man. I'm right there on the front line. My body armor's right back here. We're ready. We're under attack here, world. Every time I get on, I'm not in a suit and tie. I'm a former comedian that played my piano with, never mind. And now I'm in a green military shirt because I mean business, and that's what we're doing. So obviously that's not good either. The tension is ratcheting it up. Nobody really seems to be wanting to back down at all or have any kind of breathing room at all. This was a fun little story that I heard about today, which I thought, Donovan, you're going to really like this one. This is a report from antiwar.com. U.S. Special Forces, Operations Forces, are on the ground in Ukraine. This comes out of a report from the Intercept. They reported this on Wednesday. Both the antiwar.com article and the Intercept article I have also put in the show notes, so you can read those for yourself. You are welcome because you should just do it. But the U.S. Special Operations Forces are on the ground in Ukraine as part of a broad covert operation that includes CIA personnel. The Intercept reported on Wednesday, citing unnamed U.S. intelligence and military officials. The report said that, and what's funny, we've talked about this before. If the New York Times says they cite unnamed people, I don't really believe them. if the Intercept cites unnamed intelligence sources, I kind of believe him more, at least, than I do the New York Times. Donovan saying he doesn't have time to consider what is going to wear, but he has time for Twitter beef with Elon. Amen. Yeah, that was a shit show. And now Elon's trying to like go through with the deal, and now Twitter's trying to fight back and be like, "Nah, actually, we still gonna go to court, bitch. We can't just end this, and you can't just buy it." It's so stupid. But yeah, you got time to do Vogue magazine shoots with your wife, and you got this and that and the other thing, but you can't change your shirt and dress up nice. Can't do that. You were in a suit when you were on that game show in Ukraine where you're playing the piano with your wing wang. Can't do it now because we have war, baby. But yeah, it goes in and it talks about the article from the Intercept, which is a great read. It's nice and long. We're not going to do it today, which is why I put it in the show notes. And it kind of goes into, generally speaking, more or less the incompetence of the CIA, kind of in general, especially as it pertains to their intelligence in Ukraine, which reminded me of a semi-recent episode of Lex Friedman's podcast. He had on a guy that was a former CIA spook who's now in the private sector doing the same shit. But he was talking about essentially like the way the CIA works is everybody likes to think that, they're this big, scary, super organized, knows everything that's going on in the world type of organization, when really they're an organization that is, their whole concept is to build that image for the rest of the world to see that way. So like they're just supposed to look like they have everything going on, but in reality it's a crapshoot half the time. We don't really know what's going on, and that's the way the CIA really operates. So it is of no surprise to me that it wouldn't be a surprise to me if the intel on the Dugana girl was part of CIA intel that was probably bad, and then we accidentally blew up her instead of her dad. That wouldn't surprise me either. So that's all good stuff. But of course, we're going to cap it all off with the President of the United States bringing up the big A word, the big Armageddon word. So this took place, I believe, yesterday, but we'll go ahead and read this from the AP. Biden's, quote, Armageddon talk edges beyond bounds of U.S. intel. Washington, President Joe Biden warning that the world is, quote, at risk of a nuclear Armageddon was designed to send an unvarnished message that no one should underestimate the extraordinary danger if Russia deploys tactical nuclear weapons in its war against Ukraine. Administration officials said Friday. The president's grim assessment delivered during a Democratic fundraiser, of course, it was on Thursday night, rippled across the globe and appeared to edge beyond the boundaries of the U.S. intelligence assessment. The U.S. security officials continue to say they have no evidence that Vladimir Putin has imminent plans for a nuclear strike. Well, the U.S. intelligence services also said that Ukraine was going to fall in 3 days. They also said that Afghanistan was going to be just fine without us and that we should just kick rocks and leave. Not a real good track record going on there. But they go on they talk about some of his remarks. Unfortunately, this was not a filmed, fundraiser, which does not surprise me because, of course, they don't want their fundraisers, be in public because who knows what goes on or what's promised at these fundraisers. But it goes on to talk about how he brings up the idea this is the closest we've ever been to nuclear Armageddon since the time of JFK and the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? So there's been a lot of comparisons to this effect, and I don't like this comparison at all because they're very, very different situations, like markedly different situations. First of which being JFK and, oh my gosh, now I'm not going to remember his name right off the top of my head. But the Russian equivalent at the time, or the Soviet equivalent at the time, were in regular communication, very regular communication, having talks all the time, and they were always, they were on the phone, having these conversations, bing, bang, boom, and they're watching missiles go down, and this, that, and the other thing. Castro was the dude in Cuba, but the Soviet guy that was sending the missiles to Castro in Cuba, which he was doing because we had nuclear missiles over in like Turkey and Europe and shit, but Ultimately, that whole thing kind of was able to be de-escalated because both sides had a quid quo pro, and were able to kind of like both remove some missiles and shit. They were able to also give some leeway here. But we are not in that situation. For one, we're not the ones technically at war with Russia, so we're using Zelensky as a mouthpiece who is literally just leading us further and further into war because that's what he wants. And so we're not having open communication between us and the Russians. And we're not necessarily moving our arsenals closer or farther away. We're not necessarily doing the same exact thing. NATO has already moved as far as they can move into Russian territory, minus Ukraine. And so they're just markedly different situations completely. And any comparison to this is nonsensical, and I think does the current situation a disservice, because this is markedly more dangerous in my mind than the Cuban Missile Crisis. Because there was active moving parts that could have been turned around and stopped at that point. We don't have that now because this is a proxy war right now, and our proxy is fucking belligerent and trying to blow up the world and bring everybody else with him. And there's no way we can back off because we're not technically doing anything except just funding these guys and making public remarks and probably blowing up pipelines. But there's no open conflict between the two superpowers going on, nor will I think there be. If we go into a nuclear war, we're not going to fucking declare war beforehand. People are just going to start shooting shit at each other. And this talk about tactical nuclear weapons, that's all nonsense too. It doesn't really matter. It's just we've moved on, I believe, from the era of ICBMs, because we've been learning how to deal with ICBMs since the 70s. We're not in that world anymore. There's going to be smaller yield nuclear weapons, which are still going to make Hiroshima and Nagasaki look like fucking fireworks. So I don't know, man. It's not good. But hey, it's Friday, so at least we have beers to drink. We are sending billions over there, and we don't even know what the long-term goals of Ukraine really are. Yeah, fact check, true. Anything to piss off the Russians. I mean, hell, we had we blamed our last election on the Russians, and the election before that on the Russians. We blamed everything on the Russians since Biden came into office fucking 50 years ago. This feels a lot like George W. kind of picking up the war from where his dad left off. This is just Daddy Biden finally getting into the driver's seat, as much as he's cognitively able to drive, which I would imagine I hope he doesn't have a driver's license, because I don't think he should. But yeah, it's not good, man. But hey, he may not be able to have a driver's license, but he can drive the entirety of the country and the most powerful superpower in the world. So that's good. And with that, everybody, I think that's we're gonna cap off today's fun little mini live stream. This has been a good time. It's always a good time to see everybody here. Thank you so much for joining me today on this fantastic edition of Beer Time with Big Bird. I'm gonna hit the social things. Nope, I hit the wrong button. Now we go. Now we hit the thing. Woo! Make sure you are following us on all of the, there we go, all the socials. I am at Big Bird Offie on all the socials. Donovan is at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram because he's complicated. And on Twitter, he is at Salt of the Street, singular. And obviously, we have Salt of the Streets on all that stuff, so you could do that. saltthestreets.com. You can also find everything there. And of course, our lovely YouTube. Make sure you're liking this video right now before you leave. Hit the like button. Do it. You know you do. And you wouldn't still be around if you didn't like it. And make sure to share everything with your friends, because we're awesome and you're awesome. And of course, we will see you guys next Friday in anticipation for another fantastic podcast on Saturday. Love you guys. Bye.